Hello everyone. Tonight's story is a sad one. Once, there was someone who sang a song just for me, and I did not understand how much it meant until it was already too late. Maybe I did not know how to treasure it. Maybe I was too young, too scared, or too blind to see what was right in front of me. And now, after all these years, there is only one thing I want to do. I want to send a song back to him. I do not know if he can still hear me. I do not know if words or music can ever reach the people we lose. But if they can, even for a second, then this story and this song are for him.
Like frost upon a frozen lake, it's cold tonight, isn't it? Just like my heart, so still and heavy, knowing I've run out of time with you. I go back to that gray afternoon when we held each other close, when we laughed like the world stood still, never knowing it would be the last time I'd ever hold you. Who knew your goodbye meant forever? Who knew that faded sky would turn into one lonely star, leaving me searching for you every night? Time, keep these memories from fading. Let the promises in the winter air remain. All the words I never found the strength to say. Dandelion, let the wind carry them away. Goodbye meant forever. Who knew that faded sky would turn into one lonely star, leaving me searching for you every night? Time, keep these memories from fading. Let the promises in the winter air remain. All the words I never found the strength to say. Dandelion, let the wind carry them away. All the words I never found the strength to say. Dandelion, let the wind carry them away. Carry them away. Carry them away.
Every winter, Dylan comes back to me in the quietest ways. Not as a ghost, not as some dramatic shadow standing at the edge of my room, but in the sound of wind pushing against the windows, in the pale light of a gray afternoon, in the cold that settles into a house and makes everything feel farther away than it really is. I am 30 now, old enough to have built a life people would probably call stable. I have a job, a decent apartment, a calendar full of responsibilities, and the kind of routine that is supposed to make the past less powerful. Most of the year, it works well enough. Then winter shows up, and Port Aransas finds me again. That afternoon, the sky outside my apartment looked like somebody had washed all the color out of it. The heater hummed softly in the corner, but the room still felt cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. I was sitting by the window with a cup of coffee I had already let go lukewarm, looking out at the city without really seeing it. My phone lay face down on the table beside me. My laptop was open to work I had not touched in nearly an hour. Somewhere downstairs, a neighbor slammed a door, and the sound pulled me back just long enough for me to realize I had been staring at my own reflection in the glass. "You are doing it again," I said out loud to nobody. It was a stupid habit I had picked up over the years, talking to myself like I could interrupt memory if I caught it early enough. It never worked. I reached for the coffee, took a sip, and made a face. "That is terrible," I muttered. Then, because there was nobody there to answer, I heard the voice I always hear when the room gets too quiet. "Then stop drinking it, Ethan." Dylan used to say things like that with a smile in his voice, like even the obvious could sound softer coming from him. That was the problem with losing someone at 17. They do not stay 17 in your memories because they were perfect. They stay 17 because your mind never got to watch them become anything else. Dylan never got older in my head. He never got tired of small town life, never got his own apartment, never found out whether he would have kept writing songs or gone on pretending it was just a hobby. He stayed exactly where the sea left him, bright and unfinished, with salt on his skin and too much life still waiting for him. I pressed my fingers against my eyes and leaned back in the chair. Some days I can talk about him in my own head without feeling like something is caving in. Some days I can even remember the good parts first, the easy laugh, the way he made every place feel less strange, the way he could turn a boring afternoon into something worth keeping. But winter is selfish. Winter always takes me back to the beginning and the ending at the same time. It gives me the harbor and the funeral in the same breath. The first time I saw him and the last time I ever would. I got up from the chair and crossed to the kitchen for no reason other than movement felt easier than stillness. I rinsed the old coffee down the sink, started a fresh pot, and stared at the slow dark drip as if it required my full attention. It did not. Nothing in that room required my attention. My life was waiting just outside the edges of that afternoon. Emails, deadlines, groceries, laundry, all the little things people do when they keep living. And still all I could think about was a boy with sun-browned skin and tired hands and a grin that made it impossible to stay unhappy for long. Port Aransas had not wanted me when I arrived there at 16. That was what I told myself at the time. I was a Houston kid dropped into a small coastal town that smelled like salt, diesel, fish, and old stories. My father called it home. I called it nowhere. Then I met Dylan at the harbor, and nowhere became the center of my life so quietly I did not even notice it happening. I walked back to the window with the fresh cup warming my hands and watched the gray sky press lower over the city. "You still do this to me?" I said softly. And the worst part was that even after all those years, it still felt like talking to someone who might answer. The truth is, I have built an entire adult life around surviving what happened to him. But on afternoons like that one, when the light turns thin and the world feels held in cold silence, I am not 30. I am 16 again, standing at the edge of a harbor I did not understand, about to meet the boy who would become the most beautiful and devastating thing that ever happened to me. At 16, I thought moving to Port Aransas was the end of my real life. We had left Houston so quickly that summer it felt less like a family decision and more like some punishment I had not earned. My father called it a return home, said it with that soft, stubborn pride people use when they are talking about a place they escaped years ago but never stopped loving. My mother tried to make it sound like an adventure. "It will be good for all of us," she kept saying while half our life disappeared into taped boxes. I did not argue much because arguing was useless once my father had made up his mind, but inside I hated everything about it. I hated leaving the city. I hated leaving the school where I had at least understood the rules. I hated the long drive south with my headphones on and my forehead against the window while the world got flatter, smaller, and more unfamiliar by the mile. Port Aransas looked nothing like the life I thought I was supposed to have. It was slower, louder in some ways, quieter in others, full of gulls and rusted railings and people who seemed to have known each other forever. The air always smelled like salt and bait and sun-warmed wood. Even the mornings felt different there, like the day had already started before I woke up. My father loved all of it instantly, which made me resent it even more. "This is where I learned how to fish," he said the first weekend, pointing toward the harbor like he was showing me a sacred monument. "This is where your grandfather worked. This whole place used to be our world." I shoved my hands into my pockets and said, "That is great for you." He looked at me for a second and then smiled in that patient way fathers do when they think time is on their side. "You will get it eventually." I remember rolling my eyes because I was 16 and believed I knew myself better than anyone else. Maybe that is why I ended up at the harbor alone 2 weeks later. Not because I was suddenly curious in some noble way. Mostly I was bored. There are only so many times you can walk through a new house and feel out of place before you need to get out of it. So I took my bike down toward the water one bright Saturday morning, following the streets until the houses gave way to weathered shops, nets, coolers, wooden docks, and the restless movement of working boats rocking against their ropes. It was louder than I expected. Engines humming, gulls circling overhead, men shouting to each other across the slips, ice being shoveled, fish crates being dragged across planks still damp from the morning. The whole harbor felt alive in a way the rest of town never quite did. I stood there for a while pretending not to stare like an outsider, even though I obviously was one, and that was when I saw him for the first time. He was coming down from one of the boats with a heavy crate in his arms, moving carefully but fast, like he had done this 100 times and was still trying not to slow anyone down. He was lean, not bulky the way I expected from someone who worked around fishing boats, but there was strength in the way he carried himself, in the line of his arms and shoulders. His t-shirt was damp at the collar, his hair wind-tossed, his face flushed from effort. He was handsome in a way that did not feel polished or rich or constructed, just bright and alive and real. Then his foot hit something on the dock, and the whole crate tipped. I do not know why I moved so fast. 1 second I was standing there watching, the next I was right in front of him with both hands out, catching part of the weight before it all went crashing down. "Careful," I said, breathless from the sudden effort. He looked up at me, startled, and for a second we were both just holding the crate between us like neither of us had expected the other to be there. Up close, his eyes were lighter than I had thought from a distance, and there was this quick flash of embarrassment across his face before he laughed under his breath and said, "That was almost really bad." "Yeah," I said, still gripping the side of the crate. "I noticed." He adjusted his hold and straightened up, and I let go carefully. "Thanks," he said. "I usually do a better job of not making an idiot of myself in public." I smiled before I could stop myself. Good to know I got a special performance. That made him laugh again, this time easier. "You must be the new kid." I blinked. "How do you know that?" He nodded toward the harbor like it explained everything. "Because everybody around here knows everybody, and I have never seen you before." Then he stuck out one hand, roughened from work but steady. "I am Dylan." I took it. "Ethan." He repeated my name once like he was testing how it sounded, then glanced back toward the boat and said, "Well, Ethan, since you saved me from dropping half the morning catch, I guess I owe you something." I folded my arms and said, "You could start by telling me what is going on here." Dylan grinned, picked up the crate again, and jerked his head toward the dock. "Come on, city boy. I will give you the tour." Dylan did not walk like someone showing off his world. That was the first thing I noticed once I followed him down the dock. He moved through the harbor with the ease of someone who belonged there so completely he never had to prove it. Men unloading ice nodded at him. Somebody from another boat called out, "Try not to drop this one, Dylan," and he answered without missing a beat, "That was one time and I had an audience." He said it lightly, but there was a warmth to him I had not expected, the kind that made the whole place feel less hostile just by standing next to him. He showed me the boats first, explaining which ones went out for shrimp, which ones stayed closer to shore, which captains were impossible before coffee and which ones were impossible all day. He pointed out the bait shop, the fish cleaning station, the small weather-beaten office where people argued over receipts and fuel prices, and the stretch of dock where the gulls gathered like they paid rent. That one will absolutely steal your lunch if you look weak, he told me, nodding toward an especially aggressive bird sitting on a piling. Good to know the wildlife here can also sense vulnerability. Dylan laughed. You are catching on fast. The strange part was how easy it felt talking to him. I had spent the last 2 weeks in Port Aransas acting like every person I met was part of some test I had no interest in passing. But with Dylan, I did not feel the need to defend myself from the town or from him, or from the version of myself that was still angry about being there. He just kept talking, telling me little stories about people I had never met and places I would have ignored without him, until somewhere in the middle of it I stopped feeling like an outsider being guided around and started feeling like I was actually seeing the place for the first time. At one point he gestured toward a weathered blue boat tied at the far end and said, "That is ours." I looked over. "Your family's?" He nodded. "Yeah. My dad goes out most mornings, and I help when I am not at school." I looked back at him then, at the damp collar of his shirt and the tiredness he seemed to wear so casually it almost disappeared, and for the first time I understood that this was not some weekend hobby. This was work. Real work. The kind that left salt in your hair and soreness in your shoulders before most people had even decided what they wanted for breakfast. "That is a lot," I said before I could stop myself. Dylan shrugged like I had commented on the weather. "It is normal here." Then he glanced at me and smiled a little. "Probably not where you are from." "No," I admitted. "Definitely not Houston." That made his eyebrows lift. "So you really are a city boy?" "Apparently that is my whole identity now. I mean, it is strong branding." I laughed, and it startled me how natural it sounded coming out of me. By the time he finished the tour, the sun had climbed higher and the whole harbor smelled like hot wood and salt and fish and diesel. My stomach reminded me I had skipped breakfast, and before I could think too hard about whether it would sound weird, I said, "Let me buy you lunch." Dylan looked genuinely surprised. "For almost dropping a crate on you?" "For not dropping it on me," I said. "And for the tour." He hesitated for a second, then nodded. "Okay, but if the gulls steal your fries, that is on you." We ended up at a little seafood place near the water with plastic baskets, paper napkins, and windows that looked out toward the boats. Dylan ordered the cheapest thing on the menu like he had done the math before I even sat down. I ordered way too much because I did not know what people were supposed to eat after unloading boats all morning. When the food came, he looked at my tray and said, "You know there are only 2 of us, right?" I panicked. "That is incredible." He smiled when he said it, though, and once we started eating the conversation became even easier than it had been on the dock. He told me about the school, which teachers were secretly decent and which ones treated every class like a hostage situation. I told him Houston had been louder and bigger and easier to disappear inside. He asked if I missed it and I said yes too quickly. He nodded like he understood without taking it personally. Then he said, "You will get used to this place eventually." I looked at him over my drink and asked, "Everybody here rehearsing the same line?" He smiled, leaned back in the booth and said, "Maybe we are all just right." I should have rolled my eyes. Instead, I found myself smiling again. Somewhere between the harbor tour and that lunch by the water, Dylan stopped feeling like a random boy from a fishing town and became something far more dangerous than that. He became the first person in Port Aransas who made staying there feel possible. After that lunch, Dylan stopped being just the boy from the harbor and became the first part of Port Aransas that felt like it had been waiting for me. The next week at school, everything looked a little different, mostly because now there was one person in the building I actually wanted to see. I noticed him before first period almost every morning after that. Sometimes he was at his locker with a basketball tucked under one arm, talking to somebody from the team. Sometimes he was in the music room before class, guitar in hand, half laughing at something one of the choir girls had said. The weird thing was, I had already heard people talk about him before we ever really met. Mostly girls. Dylan this, Dylan that, the guy with the voice, the one who hit that game-winning shot last season, the one who never seemed to have a girlfriend even though half the school had probably imagined it. Back when I first moved there, all of that had sounded like background noise. Now every detail landed differently because I could finally connect the stories to an actual person. And that person kept becoming more interesting the more I paid attention. He found me outside my history class one Tuesday and said, "So, city boy, have you decided if this town is survivable yet?" I leaned against the wall and said, "I am still gathering evidence." "That sounds slow. I like to be thorough." He smiled. "Then I guess I should help." That was how he got me into basketball first. I told him I had played some in Houston but never seriously, and he looked at me like I had just admitted to owning a guitar I refused to tune. "Come to practice," he said. "If you are terrible, I will tell you gently." That does not sound gentle. I am being generous. I went mostly because saying no to him already felt harder than it should have. The gym smelled like old wood and sweat, and that weird rubber scent every school gym seems to have no matter what state you are in. Dylan was different there too. Sharper, faster, louder in the right ways. He was not the biggest guy on the court, not even close, but he moved like somebody who understood exactly how much space he needed and never wasted any of it. Lean, quick, balanced, with the kind of strength that comes from using your body for real things instead of building it for mirrors. The first time he stole the ball from me during a scrimmage and grinned over his shoulder on the way down the court. I had the ridiculous thought that Port Aransas had been hiding all of its best parts on purpose. After practice, he tossed me a bottle of water and said, "You are better than I expected. You say the sweetest things. Do not let it go to your head. Your defense still needs help." There it is. I was waiting for the insult. He bumped my shoulder lightly with his. That was not an insult. That was coaching. A week later, he pulled me into music club too. Absolutely not. I told him the first time he brought it up. I do not sing in front of people. Dylan looked almost offended. That is not true. You sang along in the car when I dropped you off after practice. That was not singing. That was surviving your playlist. He laughed. You have no taste. I have standards. You are coming anyway. The worst part was that he was right again. I went. The music room became its own little world after school, full of guitar strings, half-finished harmonies, sheet music, cheap folding chairs, and teenagers pretending not to care very much about the fact that they cared a lot. Dylan belonged there just as naturally as he belonged at the harbor or on the basketball court. He had one of those voices that made people stop talking without even meaning to, not because it was loud, because it felt real, warm and a little rough around the edges in a way that made every lyric sound more honest than it probably was. The first time I heard him sing up close, I looked down at my hands halfway through because it felt strangely intrusive to watch him too carefully. After rehearsal, he nudged my arm and said, "You disappeared for a minute. I was listening. That sounds suspiciously sincere. Do not get used to it." By then, our routines had started knotting themselves together in quiet ways. If I did not see him at lunch, I looked for him automatically. If a day went by without basketball or music club or some random stop by the harbor, it felt off. He became the first person I called when Port Aransas annoyed me, and the first person who made it less annoying just by picking up. One Friday afternoon, while I was helping him untangle cables after practice, he said, "You know, you are much less unbearable than when you moved here." I looked at him. That is such a generous thing to say. He smiled without looking up. I thought so. I should have had some easy answer ready, something sarcastic and safe. Instead, I found myself watching him for a beat too long and thinking that he had become the first real friend I had in that town. Maybe the first person who had ever made a place feel livable simply by being in it. "You are not so bad yourself," I said finally. Dylan looked up then, surprised for half a second before his smile softened into something quieter. "Wow," he said, I should write this down. Ethan finally said something nice without needing to be held at gunpoint. I laughed and shoved one of the cables into his arms. Do not ruin it. Too late, he said, still smiling. The truth was, he already had. He had ruined every simple version of my life in the best possible way. I just did not know it yet. By the middle of junior year, Dylan had become the shape of my days without either of us ever saying that out loud. He was the first person I looked for in the morning and the last one I wanted to talk to before I went to sleep. If I got through a whole school day without seeing him, something felt off in a way I could never explain to anyone else without sounding ridiculous. Most afternoons followed the same rhythm. Basketball practice if it was a team day. Music club if rehearsal was coming up. Then, on weekends or any free afternoon Dylan had left over after helping his family. The harbor. At first I only went there because I did not have a better place to be. After a while, I started going because Dylan was there, and the difference between those two reasons was bigger than I wanted to think about. There was something strangely peaceful about the harbor once I stopped treating it like proof that my life had gone in the wrong direction. The wood under the docks always smelled sun-baked and damp at the same time. Gulls circled overhead like they owned the town. Men shouted across boats. Crates scraped against planks. Ropes knocked softly against metal. And somewhere under all of it was the steady breathing sound of the water itself. Dylan moved through that world like he belonged to it in a way I never would. One Saturday I showed up around noon with 2 paper bags from the sandwich place near the gas station, and he spotted me from halfway down the dock. He was carrying a coiled rope over one shoulder, his t-shirt damp from work, hair pushed back by the wind. "You brought food," he called. "You say that like it is a surprise." He dropped the rope into the back of the truck and walked toward me with that grin that always made it difficult to stay in a normal mood. "No, I say that like I am trying to figure out what you want." I handed him one of the bags. "Maybe I am just a generous person." He looked inside, then looked back at me. "Turkey and extra chips. You remembered. It is not exactly advanced science. Still counts." We ended up sitting on the edge of the dock with our lunches while his father worked farther down by the boat, occasionally glancing over with the kind of expression older people get when they think they understand more than you do. Dylan noticed me looking and said, "Do not worry. He already assumes you are part of the furniture. That feels rude." "No, it means he likes you." I took a bite of my sandwich and said, "You people have strange ways of showing affection around here." Dylan laughed. "You are still saying around here like you are visiting." "Maybe I am. You have been here almost a year. That is not enough time to fully commit to a place that smells like fish all the time." He nudged my shoulder with his. "You like it more than you admit." I started to deny it, then stopped because the truth was that I did. Or at least I liked the version of it that came with him. He had a way of making even the most ordinary things feel like part of some private language between us. Waiting while he finished helping his father tie off lines. Sitting on overturned crates while he told me stories about storms and tourists and all the ridiculous people who came through the harbor every summer. Listening to him hum bits of melodies under his breath while he worked, like songs were always half forming in him even when he was doing something completely unrelated. At school, our lives kept tangling together in ways other people noticed before I let myself. We were both on enough people's radar by then to get talked about more than I enjoyed. Dylan because he was Dylan, good at everything in that annoyingly natural way, basketball, music, being liked. Me because I was always beside him. "You two are basically attached now," one of the girls from music club said one afternoon while we were setting up chairs. Dylan did not even look up from the microphone cable in his hands. "That sounds unhealthy," he said. I answered, "It is very limiting for my personal growth." She laughed and walked off, but the word stayed with me anyway. Attached. It should have felt embarrassing. Instead it felt true in a way that made me uneasy. Even at home, our families had stopped pretending this was anything other than a shared life in progress. His mother texted mine recipes. My father started saving the sports section for Dylan. My mother bought the chips he liked without asking if he was coming over because she had apparently given up on needing confirmation. One night after dinner, when Dylan and I were doing homework at the kitchen table, my father came in from the backyard and said, "I swear, you two spend more time together than married couples." I nearly dropped my pencil. Dylan looked down at his notebook so fast I knew he was trying not to smile. "That is a weird thing to say to minors," I muttered. My father shrugged and grabbed a soda from the fridge. "I am just making observations." My mother smacked his arm with a dish towel as she walked by. "Ignore him. He thinks being a father means saying the wrong thing with confidence." Dylan laughed into his sleeve, and I looked over at him in time to catch that rare, unguarded expression on his face, bright and easy and completely at home. It hit me then, not as a sudden revelation, but as a quiet certainty I was no longer able to outrun. Dylan was no longer just my first friend in Port Aransas. He was the person every part of my life had started bending toward, and I had absolutely no idea what I was supposed to do about that. Senior year came in quietly, and that was somehow worse than if it had announced itself properly. One day we were juniors joking our way through practice and rehearsal like time was endless, and the next day people were talking about college applications, scholarship deadlines, final games, final concerts, final everything. I hated the word final almost as much as I hated how often it made Dylan go quiet when he thought I was not looking. Up until then, I had managed to keep my feelings folded up into something I could carry without examining too closely. I knew I wanted to be around him all the time. I knew the sound of his laugh could fix a bad day faster than anything else. I knew I looked for him first in every crowded room and measured every week by how much of it I got to spend beside him. But senior year made all of that harder to ignore because suddenly there was an end date on everything, and once you can see the edge of something, you start telling yourself truths you avoided when it still felt endless. Dylan and I were in the music room one afternoon after school, helping set up for rehearsal, when one of the girls from choir asked, "So where are you guys applying?" Dylan looked down at the guitar in his hands before he answered. "Probably somewhere in state," he said. "Depends on money." She nodded like that was normal, but I felt the answer land in my chest anyway. I had heard my parents talk about campuses in Austin and Dallas and San Antonio like my future was a menu I could take my time choosing from. Dylan did not get to talk about it that way. For him, every plan had to fit around what his family could survive without. Later, when it was just the two of us carrying folding chairs back into storage, I said, "You could get a music scholarship." Dylan gave me a sideways look. "That is very optimistic." "It is also true." He smiled faintly. "You always sound so offended when I do not treat my life like a movie." I set the chairs down and looked at him. "Maybe because you are good enough for bigger things than this town." He held my gaze for a second longer than usual and said quietly, "Maybe this town is not the part one I'm worried about leaving." That should have made me say something real. It should have made me ask the question I was already afraid of. Instead, I looked away first and muttered, "You are getting weirdly dramatic again." He laughed softly, but there was something sad tucked inside it. Around then, Dylan started writing more songs. Not the silly half-finished hooks he used to make up when he was bored, but real songs, careful ones, songs he would scribble into the margins of his notebooks or hum under his breath when he thought nobody was listening. Sometimes I would catch him in the gym after practice, sitting alone in the bleachers with a pen in one hand and that faraway expression people get when they are trying to drag something private into words. "Working?" I asked him once. He closed the notebook halfway and said, "Trying. Is it about anything good? That depends on whether you think suffering improves art." I sat beside him and bumped my shoulder lightly against his. "You are 17. Your suffering is probably just mild inconvenience with good lighting." He laughed and shook his head. "You are the worst. And yet you keep me around." He looked out across the empty court and said, "Yeah, Ido." It was the way he said it that stayed with me. Not joking, not casual, just honest enough to be dangerous. By then, People had fully accepted that Dylan and I came as a set. We sang together often enough in music club that teachers started pairing us automatically. On the basketball court, we moved like people who knew each other's timing without having to think about it. In the hallway, somebody once called out, "Where's your other half?" When Dylan showed up without me, and he rolled his eyes so hard you would have thought it did not matter at all. But later that afternoon, when I found him by the bleachers and handed him the hoodie he had left in my truck, he said, "You know, that was weird." "Which part?" "The other half part." I tried to laugh it off. People here have no hobbies. Dylan took the hoodie from me, but instead of putting it on right away, he held it between both hands and looked down at it. "Still," he said, "it was weird. I should have known then. Maybe some part of me did. But I was still living inside that stupid fear that if I looked directly at what was happening, I would ruin it. So I kept doing what I had become very good at. I stayed close. I stayed loyal. I stayed almost honest. And Dylan, maybe because he was braver than I was, maybe because he had been feeling it longer, stopped pretending the music he was writing was about nobody. When the school announced that seniors could perform original work at the final spring celebration, everybody in music clubs started throwing around ideas. Covers, duets, band arrangements. Dylan said nothing at first. Then one day after rehearsal, he came up to me while I was shoving sheet music into my bag and said, "I think I am going to do one of mine." I looked up. "Seriously?" He nodded. "Yeah. Since when do you perform songs you actually care about in front of people? Maybe I am trying something new. That sounds suspicious." He smiled, but his hands were restless at his sides. "Would it matter if I said it kind of is?" I laughed because I did not know what else to do with the nervous energy that always hit me when he looked at me like that. "You are impossible." "Maybe," he said, then softer. "Would you listen though? I mean really listen." Something in his tone made the whole room feel narrower. "Yeah," I said, and even to myself my voice sounded different. "Of course I would." He held my gaze for one long quiet second and then nodded like I had confirmed something important. "Good," he said, "because I think I am finally done writing it." That night I could not stop thinking about the way he said finally. Like whatever was in that song had been waiting inside him longer than I understood. And for the first time since I met him, I began to feel something heavier than longing pressing at the edges of everything I had with Dylan. Not because I loved him. I already knew that, even if I had not been brave enough to say it cleanly to myself. It was heavier because I was starting to understand that Dylan might love me back, and nothing in my life had ever terrified me more. The night of the senior celebration felt like the whole town had decided to dress up and pretend endings were beautiful. The gym had been transformed with string lights, paper decorations, and rented speakers that made every microphone pop slightly before somebody adjusted it. Parents filled the back rows with cameras ready. Teachers stood around looking sentimental in that exhausted way adults do when they think a milestone is more meaningful because they have seen it happen 100 times. Students moved everywhere in clusters, dressed better than usual, louder than usual, trying very hard to act like graduation was exciting and not terrifying. I remember almost none of that clearly. What I remember is Dylan backstage with his guitar, one foot tapping lightly against the floor, his jaw too still for someone who claimed he was calm. "You look sick," I told him. He looked over and said, "That is encouraging. I am just being observant." He adjusted the strap of the guitar and gave me a crooked smile that did nothing to hide the nerves underneath it. "I am fine. You are lying." "Probably." I stepped closer and lowered my voice. "Then why are you doing this if it is freaking you out so bad?" For a second he just looked at me, not at the crowd beyond the curtain, not at the other performers moving around us, just at me. "Because some things are worse if you never say them," he said. I laughed softly because the line sounded dramatic enough to be a joke, but something in his face stopped me from treating it like one. "Well," I said, "that is not ominous at all." He looked down at the guitar and then back at me. "Just listen, okay?" I always listen. No, he said quietly. Really listen. Before I could answer, someone from the music department leaned in and said, Dylan, you are up in 30 seconds. He nodded without looking away from me, and then he was gone, moving toward the light. I took a seat near the side of the stage where I could still see clearly. The room dimmed a little. The applause rolled through for the previous act, and then Dylan stepped out alone with the guitar in his hands. The second he sat down on the stool and adjusted the microphone, the whole gym changed shape for me. He had always been good on stage. That was not new. What was new was the way he looked that night, like he had already made peace with whatever would happen once the song existed outside of him. He strummed once, soft and low, and then started to sing. I do not think I understood the first verse right away. Not fully. I knew it was beautiful. I knew his voice sounded warmer and rougher than usual, the kind of voice that makes people stop shifting in their seats and actually pay attention. But halfway through, something in the lyrics started pressing against me in a way I could not ignore. He was singing about waiting beside someone without ever knowing how to cross the distance. About learning a person so well that silence itself began to sound like their name. About wanting something impossible and carrying it anyway. The whole time, his eyes kept finding me. Not by accident. Not once or twice. Every time the chorus came back, every time the words got more open, more unguarded, more painful, he looked straight at me like the rest of the room was just weather around us. By the end of the song, my pulse was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. When the applause came, it sounded far away. People stood. Teachers smiled at each other like they had just witnessed young talent blooming. Somebody behind me said, "That was insane." And somebody else whispered, "Who do you think it was about?" I already knew, or at least I knew enough to be terrified. I did not go backstage right away. I told myself I was just waiting for the crowd to clear, but really I was trying to steady something inside me that had started spinning too fast. By the time I found him, the performance was over. The decorations looked suddenly tired, and most people had drifted outside or toward the parking lot. Dylan was near the side exit behind the gym, guitar case leaning against the wall, both hands shoved into the pockets of his jacket. When he saw me, something unreadable flickered across his face. "Hey," he said. "Hey." The silence after that felt bigger than the building. I took a step closer and said the first true thing I could manage. That song was not about nothing. Dylan let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "No," he said. "It really was not." I looked at him then, really looked at him, at the fear in his eyes, the way his shoulders were held too carefully, the way he seemed ready to run and stay at the same time. "Dylan," I said, and even hearing his name come out of my mouth made everything worse somehow. He swallowed and said, "Ethan, if you want me to lie, I can. I can tell you it was just a song and you heard what you wanted to hear." I stared at him. "But..." He took one step toward me. "But I do not think I can do that anymore." Then, before I could stop him or understand what was happening fast enough to brace for it, he lifted both hands and held my face so gently it made my chest hurt. His fingers were warm. His eyes did not leave mine. "I wrote it about you," he said, voice shaking now in a way it had not on stage. "I think I have been writing everything about you for a while." The world did not stop. Cars still passed somewhere beyond the school. Voices drifted from the parking lot. A door slammed inside the building. But my whole body reacted like time had split open. I could not breathe right. I could not think straight. The fear that hit me was not about Dylan. It was about myself, about the fact that some part of me had known this was coming and had wanted it, and I had no idea what to do with that. Dylan saw something in my face then. Maybe confusion, maybe panic, maybe the ugly truth that I was not brave enough to meet him where he was. He leaned closer anyway, like the answer mattered less than finally saying it. "I know this might ruin everything," he whispered, "but I love you. I had to tell you at least once." And that was the moment everything I had buried came rushing upward so fast I did not even recognize it before it turned into fear. I wish I could tell you that I understood myself in that moment, that I heard Dylan say he loved me and immediately recognized the truth waiting inside me too. But 17 is not an age known for grace under pressure, and I was not built for honesty when it mattered most. 1 second Dylan's hands were on my face, warm and shaking, his eyes searching mine like he had finally stepped to the edge of something he had been carrying alone for too long. The next second my whole body reacted before my heart could catch up. I stepped back so hard his hands slipped away from me. He looked stunned, but he did not move. "Ethan," he said quietly, as if saying my name more gently might stop whatever was happening to me. I could barely hear him over my own breathing. It felt like every feeling I had spent months trying not to name had rushed upward at once, and instead of recognizing them, I panicked. "What are you doing?" I asked, and even to my own ears my voice sounded wrong, too sharp, too defensive, like I was already trying to protect myself from something that had not actually hurt me. Dylan looked like I had slapped him without touching him. "I am telling you the truth." "No," I said too fast. "No, Dylan, that is not." I could not even finish the sentence because I did not know what sentence I was trying to build. Wrong felt too simple. Impossible felt too honest. Terrifying was the word I should have used, but I was not brave enough for that either. Dylan swallowed and stepped toward me again, smaller this time, like he already knew the answer but had not stopped hoping I might surprise him. "Ethan, I know this is a lot. I know I should have said it differently. I know maybe I should not have said it at all, but I could not keep pretending. Are you serious right now?" I cut in. He went still. "What?" The fear in me turned mean because fear does that when it has nowhere decent to go. "I thought you were my friend," I said, the second the words left my mouth. Some part of me knew I would spend the rest of my life wanting them back. Dylan looked at me like he had stopped understanding the room we were standing in. "I am your friend. Then why would you do this?" My voice rose, and I hated how much I sounded like someone I would not have respected even an hour earlier. Dylan shook his head once, almost like he could not believe what he was hearing. "Because I love you," he said, and there was no performance left in him now, no stage light, no song, no courage polished into beauty, just the raw, broken truth of it. Because I could not keep carrying it and still act like nothing was different. He reached for my wrist then, not hard, not forcing anything, just one desperate instinctive movement because he could feel me pulling farther away with every second. "Ethan, please, just listen to me for 1 minute." I jerked back and pulled my hand free like his touch had burned me. "Do not." His whole face changed then, not into anger, into hurt so direct it made the air feel thin. I should have stopped. I should have breathed once and let myself feel what was actually under the panic. Instead, I said the ugliest thing I could have said. "Are you sick or something? I cannot believe you made me think we were just friends." Dylan stared at me, and I could see the words landing one by one. "Ethan," he said, but this time my name sounded smaller, like something already slipping away. I took another step back. "Just stay away from me. That is not what you want." He said it softly, not accusing, just heartbreakingly sure, and that certainty terrified me more than anything else had that night. "You do not get to tell me what I want," I snapped. "Go away. I do not want to see you." For a second, neither of us moved. The parking lot lights hummed. Laughter drifted from farther away where the last of our classmates were still taking photos and saying goodbye like the world had not just split open behind the gym. Dylan's guitar case was still leaning against the wall beside him. His hands hung uselessly at his sides. "Okay," he said finally, but his voice had gone hollow. "Okay, Ethan." I turned and walked away before he could say anything else, because if I had stayed 1 second longer, I might have had to face the truth. The worst part was that even as I crossed the parking lot with my chest so tight I thought I might be sick, I already knew I was not running from Dylan. I was running from the part of myself that had wanted him to mean every word. The next few days passed like I was moving through water, hearing everything late and feeling everything twice. School still happened. Classes still started. And ended on time. People still talked about graduation like it was the most important thing in the world. But none of it felt real anymore. Dylan called me that night after I got home from the celebration. I stared at his name on my phone until the screen went dark. Then he called again. Then he texted. I did not answer any of it. At first I told myself I needed space, that I was too confused, too angry, too overwhelmed to say anything decent. The truth was simpler and uglier. I was scared of what I would hear in his voice if I picked up, and I was even more scared of what would happen if I finally stopped lying to myself. On Sunday morning, my mother knocked on my bedroom door and asked, "Did something happen with Dylan?" I was sitting on the floor with my phone in my hand and had still not opened his messages. "No," I said too fast. She stayed in the doorway for a second and said, "That sounded fake." I shrugged and looked away. "We are just not talking." My mother studied me in that quiet way she had when she already knew enough not to push. "He came by yesterday," she said. My head lifted before I could stop it. "When?" "Late afternoon. You were in your room." My chest tightened. "What did he say?" "Not much. He just asked if you were home." She paused, then added softly, "He looked like he had not slept." After she left, I sat there a long time with the phone in my hand before I finally opened the messages. The first ones were short and messy, sent too soon after everything had fallen apart. "Ethan, please answer. Ethan, I am sorry. I should not have said it like that." Then they got longer, softer, more careful. He wrote about the harbor and the first lunch by the water. He wrote about basketball practice and the songs he used to test on me before he finished them. He wrote that he had been trying to ignore how he felt for months because he did not want to lose me, and that telling me had not been brave so much as impossible not to do anymore. One message made my hands start shaking. "Ethan, I am sorry if I made you feel trapped. Never wanted that. I only wanted you to know the truth once in my life. If it costs me you, then I guess I have to live with that." I read it 3 times. Then I kept reading. The final message was shorter than the rest, and somehow that made it worse. "Ethan, I am sorry I crossed the line. I am sorry if I ruined what we had. But I need you to know this once without pretending. I love you. I think I have for a long time. I will always be your friend no matter what. I hope college gives you the life you want." I sat there with my back against the bed and finally let the truth all the way in. I loved him. That was why I had panicked so badly. Not because what Dylan felt was wrong, but because it was right, and I had not been ready to see myself clearly enough to survive it. I called him right away. No answer. I called again. Still nothing. I texted him, then called one more time, and when it went unanswered again, I checked the day and remembered it was the weekend. Dylan was probably at the harbor. He had ignored calls during work before. That thought gave me just enough hope to move. I grabbed my keys and drove harder than I should have, with my phone on the passenger seat and my pulse beating so hard it hurt. The closer I got to the harbor, the more wrong everything felt. Traffic slowed. I saw emergency lights before I saw the crowd. Red and blue flashed against the gray afternoon, and by the time I got out of the truck there were already too many people gathered along the dock. I started calling Dylan again as I pushed through them. Nobody answered. I remember the smell first, salt and fuel and something sharp in the air that did not belong to an ordinary day. Then I saw the rescue crews. Then I saw the damaged boat being pulled in toward shore. Broken in a way my mind understood before I let myself say the words. It was his family's boat. For a second, everything inside me went completely still. Then I started moving again. Faster, shoving through bodies, calling his name like the force of it might change what I was seeing. Someone grabbed my arm and told me to stay back. I pulled free and kept searching the dock, the stretcher, the rescue workers, the water, anything but the truth. But grief does not arrive as one clean blow. Comes in pieces, each one crueler than the last. A familiar Jackie. A voice sang a surname I recognized. the sight of his father on the dock. Then Dylan. When I saw him, something in me failed so completely it did not feel like crying or screaming or even pain at first. It felt like my body had forgotten how to hold itself together. I know I tried to get to him. I know I said his name until it stopped sounding like a name and became only sound. I know the world tilted hard and then disappeared. When I woke up, it was in a hospital room with my mother beside me and a look on her face that told me denial was over. I asked where he was even though I already knew. She started crying before she answered, and that was all it took. I left the hospital before anyone could stop me for long and went straight to his house still praying, in some broken, useless part of myself, that I had misunderstood everything. But grief was already there ahead of me. Chairs in the yard, cars lining the street, quiet voices, flowers. Inside, Dylan lay in a white coffin looking impossibly young, like the sea had not taken him but frozen him in place. He looked 17. He looked untouched by time. He looked like if I said his name softly enough, he might open his eyes and laugh at how dramatic I was being. I stood there and finally understood the full shape of what I had done. I had loved him. I had loved him at the harbor, in the gym, in the music room, in every call before bed, in every lunch by the water. And when he put the truth in my hands, I had answered him with fear and cruelty. I wanted one more hour behind the gym, one more call to pick up, one more chance to say, Dylan, wait, I know now, I know. But grief is merciless because by the time it teaches you what mattered most, there is nothing left to save. I left Port Aransas for college carrying a love that had nowhere left to go and a guilt that never really learned how to fade. Dylan stayed there by the water forever, bright and unfinished and 17. And every winter, when the light turns gray and the world grows quiet in that particular way, I still find myself back on that dock, loving him too late all over again.
Sky would turn into one lonely star, leaving me searching for you every night.